Here's a question I received in the comment area, and I will put a link to the video that has the comment at the end of this video. And I will put a link to this video in the other video and in the comment area. But the individual made a pretty good point. I drew a fence like this and provided everyone with a design. And then the individual said, well, how in the heck do you put it together? So let's go ahead and take a look at putting a fence like this together. This is going to be T111, and we will need a starting trim that will be going around. So this trim right here will be used to place our next layer of fencing boards up against, and then of course on the other side we will have another piece of trim here. So we need to somehow attach a piece of trim to the post so that we can start installing our TNG panels. First step we will need to do will be to figure out where we want to put the fencing boards. If we want to put them in the center, then we will need to find the center. Half of 3.5 inches will be 1 3/4 inches, and then we will simply go out 3/8 on each side since we're going to be using 3/4 inch lumber. And then we're going to make a mark, some type of a mark that can be used so that we can attach our trim. And of course that line will need to go all the way around the perimeter of our opening. And after that we can install our trim. And of course you can use screws or nails and even staples. Here I have screws. Now I think the individual who asked this question was concerned about using longer trim. I have 1 3/4 inch trim here. You can still use 1 3/4 inch trim. You're just going to have to use screws or nails. It'd be difficult to screw through this without some type of a pilot hole. So you're probably going to have to drill a pilot hole if you're going to use larger trim. If not, use smaller trim. This is 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch trim. Now you can start at the top or the bottom. If you start at the bottom, just simply leave the top cap board off so that you can get this board in here. If you start at the top, you can simply wedge the last piece. You can push it up. You'll be able to shove it up into place. Screws, nails, or staples, finish nails, common nails again. I like to use screws. Why? So that I can take this stuff apart if it needs to be repaired. Take a look at the other side there. See how the fencing board is tight up against the trim. And if you do leave the groove up on this, usually the 3/4 inch trim will be wide enough to cover the tongue for the tongue and groove. When you're installing your second board, you will not, but you can. I think 1 screw or 1 nail here is going to be sufficient, and simply start working your way down to the bottom there. And like I said, the last board here, when you go to put it in, you can usually get a pry bar and pull it up. And I like to have you can always do the math, lay everything out, but I hate to have a small board up here. You have everything looks nice. I like to have everything uniform. Most of the time you're going to have plants or something covering this area up here. So this isn't going to be as visible as this area here. So that's when you can start with a full board to work your way down and then cut this one here to work, or so that if a board does need to be cut, it doesn't look so bad. And of course, here's what it would look like with the screws or nails. Just like I said, 1 board. The tongue and the groove is going to provide you with a nice connection here. On the other side, pan back, throw our trim in there. You can miter your corners if you want, or butt them. Again, screws, nails. Screws are going to help you pull this thing apart if there's ever a problem. And you can always use longer screws when you're going to attach this one. you know, the screw length here is going to need to be a little smaller than this distance here. But on this side, you could have the screw go all the way over to here. It could be a little smaller than the width here. So if we got 3/4 of an inch times 3, that's 1.5 inches, and 2 1/4. So if you had a 2-inch screw or a 2-inch nail, that would be fine. Even 1 3/4 inches would get you into a little bit of that. And that isn't it for this video. I got one more thing to show you. Now, someone else left a comment, but they removed it. They wanted to know if you could simply dado or cut a slot in the 4x4 and put the fencing in there. And of course, you can do that. It's going to be a little more work, but if you don't want to see the trim or something like that, or this is the look you want, then go for it. Now, the only two problems I have with this will be the fact that if the fence starts to lean or move a little bit, these boards can actually pop out, and I've seen them pop out in the center before. You know, they'll loosen up, and they don't have anything to hold it together here. Over time, the wind will start blowing it, loosen everything up, and the boards start falling out. Now, the other problem I have, and I like I said, if I use the screws to attach everything together in the other example, previous example, then I can usually make the repairs a little easier. You're not going to be able to do that with this. You know, if this board here is damaged, you're going to have to take the cap off and then pull each one of these up until you get to the damaged board. Is that going to be a lot of work? It's not going to be that much work, but I had to point it out. So if you're going to do something like this, you don't want the trim. I like to use the trim too because it creates another detail, kind of like it steps off a little bit and then steps back. But by all means, something like this is definitely another method you could use to build a fence like this with horizontal tongue and groove fencing.